Hi everybody, Professor Jim. Now we're going to work on word problems. Please keep your phone on. Don't run and hide. It's just math. I even put that. For the first, these are steps. Our first step is don't panic. It's just math. Okay. A lot of the last survey I looked at, I think, what was it, 97% of the people disliked word problems? It was a lot. So anyway, we know why. They're confusing. They have all this other stuff in it you don't need. They go on and on. They're boring, some of them. Okay, so we're going to pick an easy word problem that's not that boring with only a little bit of stuff. All right, so we can really get rid of number one. It's just math. We don't have to panic. We know that. Okay. On to the real stuff. First thing we do, we read the word problem. If we don't quite understand it, we read it again. Okay, so here's a word problem. The nurse worked 3 12-hour shifts, and then the nurse worked 13 10-hour shifts. And the nurse got paid, this is in US dollars, $25 an hour. Okay. How much did the nurse get paid? Okay, this one's pretty straightforward. There's no extra information. We don't have the nurse's name, where the nurse is from, anything else regarding the nurse, how far of a drive of it is to work, or any of that stuff. If we have that stuff and we don't need it, for the word problem, I cross it out. I use a 4-letter word for that. Yes, it's a clean 4-letter word. I edit. That's my version of saying cross out the stuff that's junk. Not junk. Background information that we don't need. Okay. All right. What is a word problem? It's a bunch of math. We know that. It tells a story. That's all it does. You can start every word problem with once upon a time. Yeah, once upon a time there was a nurse who worked 3 12-hour shifts, and then the nurse worked 13 10-hour shifts. And the nurse made $25 an hour. How much did the nurse make? You know, same type of thing, right? It's just telling a little story about math. Okay. If you need to draw a picture, if you're doing like perimeter or area or something, it's probably helpful to put a picture up there, you know, just as a visual. Okay, we don't really have to reread this. I mean, we get the idea of the nurse working. Okay. Variable, that's algebra stuff. Okay, so we can either set up an equation or we can use a formula. If there's already a way of doing things, there's no sense reinventing the wheel. Okay, in this case, we're going to use an equation. But in general, you know, we can use formulas. We have formulas for a whole bunch of things. These are abbreviated. Area equals length times width for a rectangle. That's a formula. Distance equals rate times time. That's another formula. Amount equals base times percentage. That's another formula. So distance equals rate times time. How fast, how long is it going to take me to get somewhere, how far do I have to drive, or fly in plane, or whatever I'm doing, walking. Amount equals base times percentage. Used a lot for sports, used for discounts, for shopping. That's also used a lot. These are 3 of the main formulas. Okay, in this case we can set up a nice easy equation. The nurse worked 3 12-hour shifts. So the first thing we need to know is how many hours did the nurse work. Okay, so 3 times 12 will be 36. Okay, that's the first part. Second part, the next round, the nurse worked 13 hours, and there were 10 shifts. So the number of hours that the nurse worked in total is 166 hours. and that's at $25. So we'll take 166, right? Multiply by 25. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I have to do math too. Okay, 5 times 6, 3, it's an 8. Placeholder, 2 times 6, 12. 12, 13, count 1, 3. Okay, 0, 5, 1, 4. Okay, 166 times 25. It's all done right, I hope so. Wound up being 4,150 US dollars. Okay, if you're watching this from another country, which a lot of people are, you can convert that into the money that you use for an answer. You can do it in, you know, any denomination of money you like. We just picked US dollars. Okay. All right, so that's the equation. In this case, we solved it, right? We could double check it if we want. We double check the adding, we double check the multiplying, and we stated our answer. Okay, I know a lot of people aren't going to double check the math and restate the answer. They're going to understand what's going on, they're going to figure out how to set it up, and they're going to come up with an answer. The other two parts are if you don't feel that confident in it, or you just like double checking things like I do, you can double check it and then state your answer. Never hurts if you have time on a test. If you're doing this for test purposes, you have an extra few minutes, it's always a good idea to double check what you're doing, because you might make a mistake. It happens in real life. Everybody makes mistakes, even me. So I don't count how many I make, but I make them. So that's what we'll do with the word problem. This is a nice simple word problem. Okay. All right, we can flip the board up. That's easy. All right, we'll do distance equals rate times time. All right, now we have to remember time isn't base 10. Time's based on 60 minutes. So we all know that. We have to remember it for math purposes. Okay. All right, so distance equals rate times time. So for our purposes, we're going to show time in hours with a decimal, you know, so we don't have to play with the minutes. Okay, so let's say, let me see what I'm allowed to say. Let me check my notes. What I'm allowed to say in New Jersey. Everybody drives less than the speed limit in New Jersey. We know that. Okay, let's say 50 miles an hour. Okay, I don't want to get in trouble with anybody. Okay. We're in miles. You can adjust for kilometers everywhere outside the U.S. But for whatever reason, we have miles. Okay. 50 miles an hour on Route 10. Okay. And let's say or on any route. It could be a bigger highway than Route 10. Okay. Let's say we're going to drive for 2 hours. Nice and simple word problem. Look at this. We don't panic. This is real easy, right? We understand what's going on. We set up a formula, and now we're just going to figure it out. So if we're going 50 miles an hour for 2 hours, we multiply them. That means we can drive 100 miles. Now 50 miles an hour is an average. So there's going to be times where traffic slows things down, and there might be times where things speed up. So 50 is our average, fine. So we can drive 100 miles. You know, we're driving, we're in New Jersey. If we're driving over to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, or, you know, that area, and it takes, you know, 3 hours, and we're going, let's say 60 miles an hour. We'll call it about 180 miles from give or take. Might be a little bit less. Okay. All right. Nice and easy. Have a formula. Formulas are just equations that have been used billions and billions of times, and they work. So we keep using them. Okay. Let's take a look at absolute value. We did the number one, right? Whoops. We don't want to start with 2. All right. Way back when, thousands of years ago, in our scenario, in our story, in our word problem, people traded. People still trade things around the world. Okay, so way back when they traded things, they didn't have money, they traded things. Okay, fine. So one merchant, they started in their city, and they walked the equivalent of 3 miles, or about 5 kilometers. Okay, away, and they traded with somebody, and then they came back to their city. And they went east. And then a different merchant went west 3 miles, or approximately 5 kilometers, and they traded with other people in that city. And then they came back. All right, there was a big discussion / argument about how far they went. Somebody said, I walked 3 miles to the other city or village, and I did my trading thing. And the other guy, or woman, whatever, went back to the other way, and they said, no, 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 you didn't go 3 miles, you went -3 miles. And they said, how could I walk -3 miles? It didn't make any sense, right? If you look at the number line, you have positive numbers, you have negative numbers. Okay. So anyway, they did their trading thing. They came back and had an argument, and then one of their friends said, you guys don't make any sense. They said, one of you walked 3 miles east, one of you walked 3 miles west. So you both walked 3 miles. You're negative, you can't walk a -3 miles. You can't have a negative side of a desk. It doesn't work. So they came up with something called absolute value. And it has these absolute value bars over here. Okay, so the guy who went 3 miles east walked 3 miles. The guy who went 3 miles west, that the other one said was -3 miles. These absolute value bars make everything inside it positive. They also walked 3 miles, or almost 5 kilometers. Okay, so absolute value, everything inside becomes positive. Okay. So you can add or subtract them, right? Right. Okay. All right. 9 is a positive number. -3 is a negative number. But -3 inside the absolute value bars is now +3. So we got 9. There's still a minus sign hanging out here. So absolute value-wise, we'd say 9 minus 3, 3 positive, but then they threw a minus sign in front. 9 minus 3 will be 6. So we still come out okay. You just have to keep an eye. This is math. Whether you're doing basic math, algebra, statistics, calculus, whatever you're doing, you have to keep an eye on this minus sign. This minus sign is the difference between getting math problems correct and not getting them correct. That's why I double check things. This thing comes up at all the wrong times. And when it's confusing, there's usually a minus sign hanging around. So we have to keep an eye on that. Just like if you have, let's use a different number. Without the absolute value sign, we have -7 in a round bracket. Okay, and we have a minus sign on the outside. The minus sign we can call the opposite. All right, so the opposite of a negative is positive. So the opposite of -7 is +7. If 7 was in the absolute value sign, you know, the absolute value bars, you call it sign bars, either one, same thing, then everything would have changed to positive. Okay, but it's not. It's in regular brackets. Again, we have to keep an eye on this minus sign. All right, some people have a lot of confusion. They go, oh, the opposite of a negative is a positive, the opposite of a positive is a negative. It doesn't sound like a big deal if you do it 2 or 3 times, but you can have a math problem where you do it 9 times. And after 9 times, it gets confusing. You know, the opposite of this is that, the opposite of that is this, why am I doing this? You know, they get tired of doing the math problem. So, what some people do is they put a 1 out here, and they multiply. They say -1 times -7, negative times negative is positive when you have 2 numbers. So, or when you have 4 numbers, when you have an even number of numbers, even if they're negative. You know, if they're negative. So if they're positive or they're negative, if they're both negative, if they're both positive, you have a positive answer. If you have one that's positive and one that's negative, you have a negative answer with 2 numbers multiplying. Okay, so a lot of people put a 1 out there. And there's a word for that. The 1, the number on the outside times what's on the inside, they came up with a rule. I don't want to crunch it in here, so let's make it a little bit bigger. And they call it the distributive rule. So you're distributing the number on the outside times the one on the inside. Huge in algebra. You see this all the time. Constantly. Polynomials. What are polynomials? You have a number, you have an unknown, and you have an exponent. They're used constantly. They'll do distributive rule first. When we'll get to polynomials. When we get to there, you'll see distributive rule all the time, and you'll see collecting like terms all the time. That's putting like terms together. Okay, so that's absolute value. All right, and we did some word problems, we did some absolute value. We re-looked at our number line in terms of absolute value. So we're in good shape with this video. Thanks everybody for watching. You can hit subscribe on the right. Thanks. Bye. Hi everybody. Just wanted to give a few shout outs. Wanted to thank our sponsor, Luigi's Pizza, which is in Succasunna, New Jersey on Route 10. Go see Paul, tell him I said hi. And now they have the traditional menu back, like the retro menu. And you can go see them. I also wanted to give a shout out to Santana's Hair Salon, which is also in Succasunna also at Roxbury Mall. And a quick shout out to Knight's Automotive, which is in Ledgewood section of Roxbury on Main Street for all your car and truck needs. Thanks.